Hello, I'm reading from Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm starting at the middle of page 280. Many illustrations could be given of the mathematical relationship between man's respiratory rate and the variations in his states of consciousness. A person whose attention is wholly engrossed, as in following some closely knit intellectual argument or in attempting some delicate or difficult physical feat, automatically breathes very slowly. Fixity of attention depends on slow breathing. Quick and uneven breaths are an inevitable accompaniment of harmful emotional states: fear, lust, anger. The restless monkey breathes at the rate of 32 times a minute, in contrast to a man's average of 18 times. The elephant, tortoise, snake, and other creatures noted for their longevity have a respiratory rate that is less than man's. The giant tortoise, for instance, which may attain the age of 300 years, breathes only 4 times a minute. The rejuvenating effects of sleep are due to man's temporary unawareness of body and breathing. The sleeping man becomes a yogi. Each night he unconsciously performs the yogic rite of releasing himself from bodily identification and merging the life force with healing currents in the main brain region and in 6 sub-dynamos of his spinal centers. Unknowingly, the sleeper is thus recharged by the cosmic energy that sustains all life. The voluntary yogi performs a simple natural process consciously, not unconsciously like the slow-paced sleeper. The Kriya Yogi uses his technique to saturate and feed all of his physical cells with the undecayable light, and thus to keep them in a spiritually magnetized condition. He scientifically makes breathing unnecessary and does not enter during his hours of practice the negative states of sleep, unconsciousness, or death. In men under Maya, or natural laws, the flow of life energy is toward the outward world. The currents are wasted and abused in the senses. The practice of Kriya reverses the flow. Life force is mentally guided to the inner cosmos and becomes reunited with the subtle spinal energies. By such reinforcement of life force, the yogi's body and brain cells are renewed by a spiritual elixir. Through proper food, sunlight, and harmonious thoughts, men who are led only by nature and her divine plan will achieve self-realization in 1,000,000 years. 12 years of normal, healthful living are required to affect even slight refinements in brain structure. 1,000,000 solar returns are exacted to purify the cerebral tenement sufficiently for manifestation of cosmic consciousness. A Kriya yogi, however, by use of a spiritual science, removes himself from the necessity for a long period of careful observance of natural laws. Untying the cord of breath that binds the soul to the body, Kriya serves to prolong life and enlarge the consciousness to infinity. The yoga technique overcomes the tug-of-war between the mind and the matter-entangled senses, frees the devotee to re-inherit his eternal kingdom. He knows then that his real being is bound neither by physical encasement nor by breath, symbol of mortal man's enslavement to air, to nature's elementary compulsions. Master of his body and mind, the Kriya Yogi ultimately achieves victory over the last enemy, death. So shalt thou feed on death that feeds on men. Death once dead, there is no more dying then. Introspection, or sitting in the silence, is an unscientific way of trying to force apart the mind and the senses, tied together by the life force. The contemplative mind, attempting to return to divinity, is constantly dragged back toward the senses by life currents. Kriya, controlling the mind directly through the life force, is the easiest, most effective, and most scientific avenue to approach the infinite. In contrast to the slow, uncertain bullock cart theological path to God, Kriya Yoga may justly be called the airplane route. The yogic science is based on an empirical consideration of all forms of concentration and meditation techniques. Yoga enables the devotee to switch off or on at will life current to the 5 sense telephones of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Attaining this power of sense disconnection, the yogi finds it simple to unite his mind at will with divine realms or with the world of matter. No longer is he unwillingly brought back by the life force to the mundane sphere of rowdy sensations and restless thoughts. The life of an advanced Kriya yogi is influenced not by the effects of past actions, but solely by directions from the soul. The devotee thus avoids the slow evolutionary monitors of egotistic actions, good and bad, of common life, cumbersome and snail-like to the ego hearts. The superior method of soul living frees the yogi. Emerging from his ego prison, he tastes the deep air of omnipresence. The thraldom of natural living is, in contrast, set in a pace humiliating. Conforming his life merely to the evolutionary order, a man can command no concessionary haste from nature. Though he live without error against the laws that govern his body and mind, he still requires 1,000,000 years of masquerading incarnations to attain final emancipation. The telescopic methods of a yogi, disengaging himself from physical and mental identifications in favor of soul individuality, are therefore commended to those who eye with revolt 1,000,000 years. This numerical periphery is enlarged for the ordinary man who lives in harmony not even with nature, let alone his soul, pursuing instead unnatural complexities and offending in his thoughts and body the sweet sanities of nature. For him, 2 times 1,000,000 years can scarce suffice for liberation. Gross man seldom or never realizes that his body is a kingdom, governed by Emperor Soul on the throne of the cranium, with subsidiary regents in the 6 spinal centers and spheres of consciousness. This theocracy extends over a throng of obedient subjects, 27,000 billion cells, endowed with sure if seemingly automatic intelligence by which they perform all duties of bodily growths, transformation, and dissolutions, and 50 million substratal thoughts, emotions, and variations of alternating phases in man's consciousness in the average life of 60 years. Any apparent insurrection in the human body or mind against Emperor Soul, manifesting as disease or irrationality, is due to no disloyalty among the humble servants, but stems from the past or present misuse by man of his individuality or free will, given to him simultaneously with a soul and revocable never. Identifying himself with a shallow ego, man takes for granted that it is he who thinks, wills, feels, digests, meals, and keeps himself alive, never admitting through reflection (only a little would suffice) that his ordinary life is naught but a puppet of past actions (karma) and of nature or environment. Each man's intellectual reactions, feelings, moods, and habits are merely effects of past causes, whether of this or a prior life. Lofty above such influences, however, is his regal soul. Spurning the transitory truths and freedoms, the Kriya Yogi passes beyond all disillusionment into his unfettered being. The world's scriptures declare man to be not a corruptible body, but a living soul. In Kriya Yoga, he finds a method to prove the scriptural affirmation. Outward ritual cannot destroy ignorance because they are not mutually contradictory, wrote Shankara in his famous Century of Verses. Realized knowledge alone destroys ignorance. Knowledge cannot spring up by any other means than inquiry. Who am I? How was this universe born? Who is its maker? What is its material cause? This is the kind of inquiry referred to. The intellect has no answer for these questions, hence the rishis evolved yoga as the technique for spiritual inquiry. The true yogi, withholding his thoughts, will, and feelings from false identification with bodily desires, uniting his mind with superconscious forces in the spinal shrines, thus lives in the world as God hath planned. He is impelled neither by impulses from the past nor his fresh motivations of human witlessness. Receiving fulfillment of his supreme desire, he is safe in the final haven of the inexhaustibly blissful spirit. Referring to the sure and methodical efficiency of yoga, Krishna praises the technological yogi in the following words: "The yogi is greater than body disciplining aesthetics, greater even than the followers of the path of wisdom or the path of action. Be thou, O disciple Arjan, a yogi." Kriya Yoga is the real fire rite often extolled in the Gita. The yogi casts his human longings into a monotheistic bonfire consecrated to the unparalleled God. This is indeed the true yogic fire ceremony, in which all past and present desires are fuel consumed by love divine. The ultimate flame receives the sacrifice of all human madness, and man is pure of dross. His metaphorical bones stripped of all desirous flesh, his karmatic skeleton bleached by the antiseptic sun of wisdom, inoffensive before man and maker, he is clean at last. This is a picture of Sri Janakananda, parentheses James J. Lynn. In this photograph, he's not breathing. Chapter 27. Founding a yoga school in Ranchi. Why are you adverse to organizational work? Master's question startled me a bit. It is true that my private conviction at the time was that organizations are hornets' nests. It is a thankless task, sir, I answered. No matter what the leader does or does not do, he is criticized. Do you want the whole divine chana, parentheses milk curd, for yourself alone? My guru's retort was accompanied by a stern glance. Could you or anyone else achieve God communion through yoga if a line of generous-hearted masters had not been willing to convey their knowledge to others? He added, God is the honey, organizations are the hives, both are necessary. Any form is useless, of course, without the spirit, but why should you not start busy hives full of spiritual nectar? His counsel moved me deeply. Although I made no outward reply, an adamant resolution arose in my breast. I would share with my fellows, so far as lay my power, the unshackable truths I had learned at my Guru's feet. Lord, I prayed, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of my devotion, and may I be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. On a previous occasion, before I had joined the monastic order, Sri Yukteswar had made a most unexpected remark. "How you will miss the companionship of a wife in your old age," he had said. "Do you not agree that the family man engaged in useful work to maintain his wife and children thus plays a rewarding role in God's eyes?" "Sir," I had protested in alarm, "you know that my desire in this life is only for the cosmic beloved." Master had laughed so merrily that I understood his words had been uttered merely to test me. "Remember," he said slowly, "that he who rejects the usual worldly duties can justify himself only by assuming some kind of responsibility for a much larger family." The ideal of right education for youth had always been very close to my heart. I saw clearly the arid results of ordinary instruction aimed at the development of body and intellect only. Moral and spiritual values without whose appreciation no man can approach happiness were yet lacking in formal curriculum. I determined to found a school where young boys could develop the full stature of manhood. My first step in that direction was made with 7 children in Dai Hika, a small country site in Bengal. A year later, in 1918, through the generosity of Sir Minindra Chandra Nundi, the Maharaja of Kasimbazar, I was able to transfer my fast-growing group to Ranchi. This town in Bihar, had about 200 miles from Calcutta, is blessed with one of the most healthful climates in India. The Kasim Bazar Palace in Ranchi became the main building for the new school, which I called Yogoda Sanstag Brahmacharya Vidyalaya. I organized a program for both grammar and high school grades. It includes agriculture, industrial, commercial, and academic subjects, following the educational ideals of the rishis, whose forest ashrams had been the ancient seats of learning, both secular and divine, for the youth of India. I arranged that most class instructions be given outdoors. The Ranchi students were taught yoga meditation, a unique system of health and physical development, Yogoda, whose principles I discovered in 1916. Realizing that man's body is like an electric battery, I reasoned that it could be recharged with energy through the direct agency of the human will. As no action of any kind is possible without willing, man may avail himself of the prime mover, will, to renew his strength without burdensome apparatus or mechanical exercises. By the simple Yogoda techniques, one may consciously and instantly recharge his life force, centered in the medulla oblongata, from the unlimited supply of cosmic energy. The boys in Ranchi responded well to Yogoda training, developing an extraordinary ability to shift the life force from one part of the body to another and to sit perfect poise in difficult asanas, postures. They performed feats of strength and endurance that many powerful adults could not equal. My youngest brother, Bishnu Charan Ghosh, joined the Ranchi school. Later he became a noted physical culturist. He and one of his students traveled in 1938-39 to the West, giving exhibitions of strength and muscular control. Professors at Columbia University in New York and at many other universities in America and Europe were amazed by demonstrations of power of the mind over the body. At the end of the first year in Ranchi, applications for admission had reached 2,000, but the school, which at that time was solely residential, could accommodate only 100. Instruction for day students was soon added. In the Vidyalaya, I had to play father and mother to the little children and cope with many organizational difficulties. I often remembered Christ's words, "There is no man that hath left house or brethren or sisters, father or mother or wife or children, or lands, for my sake and the gospel's, but he shall receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brethren and sisters and mothers and children and lands with persecutions, and in the world to come life eternal. Sri Yukteswar had, that's Mark 10:29-30. Sri Yukteswar had interpreted these words as follows: the devotee who forgoes the usual life experiences of marriage and family rearing in order to assume greater responsibilities, those for society in general, and 100-fold now in this time, houses and brethren, parentheses, performs a work that is often accompanied by a persecution from an misunderstanding world, but such larger identifications help the devotee to overcome selfishness and bring him a divine reward. One day my father arrived in Ranchi to bestow a paternal blessing long withheld because I had hurt him by refusing to offer his offer of a position at the Bengal-Nagpur Railway. "Son," he said, "I am now reconciled to your choice in life. It gives me joy to see you amidst these happy, eager youngsters who belong here rather than with the lifeless figures of railway timetables." He waved toward a group of a dozen little ones who were tagging at my heels. "I had only 8 children," he observed with twinkling eyes. "I can feel for you." With 25 fertile acres at our disposal, the students, teachers, and I enjoyed daily periods of gardening and other outdoor work. He had many pets, including a young deer which was fairly idolized by the children. I, too, loved the fawn so much that I allowed it to sleep in my room. At the light of dawn, the little creature would toddle over to my bed for a morning caress. One day, because some business would require my attention in the town of Ranchi, I fed the pet earlier than usual. I told the boys not to feed the fawn until my return. One lad was disobedient and gave it a large quantity of milk. When I came back in the evening, sad news greeted me. The fawn is nearly dead through overfeeding. In tears, I placed the apparently lifeless pet in my lap. I prayed piteously to God to spare its life. Hours later, the small creature opened its eyes, stood up, and walked feebly. The whole school shouted for joy. But a deep lesson came to me that night, one I can never forget. I stayed up with the fawn until 2 o'clock, when I fell asleep. The deer appeared in a dream and spoke to me. "You are holding me back. Please let me go. Let me go." "All right," I answered in the dream. I awoke immediately and cried out, "Boys, the deer is dying." The children rushed to my side. I ran to the corner of the room where I had placed the pet. It made a last effort to rise, stumbled toward me, and then dropped at my feet dead. According to the mass karma that guides and regulates the destinies of animals, the deer's life was over, and it was ready to progress to a higher form. But by my deep attachment, which I later realized was selfish, and by my fervent prayers, I had been able to hold it in the limitations of the animal form which the soul was struggling for release. The soul of the deer made its plea in a dream because, without my loving permission, it either would not or could not go. As soon as I agreed, it departed. My sorrow left me. I realized anew that God wants His children to love anything as a part of Him, and not to feel delusively that death ends all. The ignorant man sees only the insurmountable wall of death, hiding seemingly forever his cherished friends. But the man of unattachment, he who loves others as expressions of the Lord, understands that at death the dear ones have only returned to a breathing space of joy in Him. The Ranchi school grew from small and simple beginnings to an institution now well known as Bihar and Bengal. While well known in Bihar and Bengal, many departments of the school are supported by voluntary contributions from those who rejoice in perpetuating the educational ideals of the Rishis. Flourishing branch schools have been established in Midnapur and Lakhanpur. The Ranchi headquarters maintains a medical department where medicines and services of doctors are supplied without charge to the poor of the locality. The number treated was averaged more than 18,000 persons a year. The Vidyalaya has made its mark too in the competitive sports and in the scholastic field, where many Rishi graduates have distinguished themselves in later university life. In the past 3 decades, the Ranchi school has been honored by visits from many eminent men and women of East and West. Swami Pranabandhananda, the Banaras saint with 2 bodies, came to Ranchi for a few days in 1918. As the master viewed the picturesque classes under the trees and saw in the evening that young boys were sitting motionless for an hour in yoga meditation, he was profoundly moved. "Joy comes to my heart," he said, "to see that Lahara Mahasaya's ideals for the proper training of youth are being carried on in this institution. My Guru's blessings be on it." A young lad sitting by my side ventured to ask the great yogi a question. "Sir," he said, "shall I be a monk? Is my life only for God?" Though Swami Pranabandha smiled gently, his eyes were piercing the future. "Child," he replied, "when you grow up, there is a beautiful bride waiting for you." The boy did eventually marry after having planned for years to enter the Swami order. Sometime after Swami Pranabandhananda had visited Ranchi, I accompanied my father to the house in Calcutta in which the yogi was temporarily staying. Pranabandhananda's prediction made to me many years before came rushing to my mind. I shall see you with your father later on." As father entered the Swami's room, the great yogi rose from his seat and embraced my parent with loving respect. "Bhagavati," he said, "what are you doing about yourself? Don't you see your son racing to the infinite?" I blushed to hear his praise before father. The Swami went on, "You recall how often our blessed Guru used to say, 'Banat, Banat, Banjai'? So keep up Kriya Yoga ceaselessly and reach the divine portals quickly." The body of Pranabandhananda, which had appeared so well and strong during my amazing first visit to him in Benares, now showed definite aging, though his posture was still admirably erect. "Swamiji," I inquired, looking straight into his eyes, "please tell me, aren't you feeling the advance of age? As the body is weakening, are your perception of God suffering any diminution? He smiled angelically. "The beloved is more than ever with me now." His complete conviction overwhelmed my mind and soul. He went on, "I am still enjoying the 2 pensions, one from Bhagavati here and one from above." Pointing his father heavenward, for a short time the saint was transfixed in ecstasy, his face lit with a divine glow, an ample answer to my question. Noticing that Pranabandhananda's room contained many plants and packages of seed, I asked their purpose. "I have left Benares permanently," he said, "and am now on my way to the Himalayas. There I shall open an ashram for my disciples. These seeds will produce spinach and a few other vegetables. My dear ones will live simply, spending their time in blissful God union. Nothing else is necessary." Father asked his brother disciple when he would return to Calcutta. "Never again," the saint replied. "This year is the one in which Lahari Messiah told me I would leave my beloved Benares forever and go to the Himalayas, there to throw off my mortal frame." Okay, that is the end of the third paragraph on page 294. That's it for today. Goodbye.